Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. As I mentioned in my previous video, I wanted to start interviewing some placement students to really uncover what each role means so that you can have a much clearer idea of what role you're actually applying to when starting to apply for placements. In this interview, I speak with Matt about the key skills that he needs as a design studio engineer, and he also goes into some really interesting stuff about what he gets up to day to day, such as working on clay models of the Range Rovers. So I really hope you find this really interesting if you're interested in the role of design studio engineer, or maybe you're just interested in Jaguar Land Rover as a company. So with that being said, let's get into the interview. What is your name? Who are you? Who do you work for? What's your job role? Let's start with that, shall we?
My name is Matt. I'm 22. I go to Loughborough Uni. My job role is an undergraduate design studio engineer at Jaguar Land Rover.
One of the most important questions of this interview: do you think that there are more doors or wheels in planet Earth?
How are we classifying a door and a wheel? Is a wheel just something that turns and a door something that opens?
That's such a design sort of engineering kind of question.
3 hours later.
Kind of a pointless question, but never mind. That is the question we've got. I don't know if that entire answer is going to make in there, because most people would have clicked off the interview if it's just talking about that question, but never mind. What are your actual responsibilities as a studio engineer?
It's quite a broad role, but I think it can be summarized as we make sure that what the designers sketch can be manufactured by the engineers, and we make sure that the engineers make what the designers sketch. So
okay.
We technically work for the designers, and we work with them through the design process, kind of as a bridge between design and engineering, to make sure that what they make is feasible. So a lot of the job role is based around feasibility and working to either make what the designers intend to release feasible, or kind of feeding design input into engineering. So we kind of act like a bridge between design and engineering, essentially.
So is it sort of a bridge between design and like the manufacturing side?
Not specifically manufacturing, just kind of everything. So it could be legals, it could be manufacturing, it could be crash, it could be literally everything outside of design. Cost, anything that's not in design, we kind of feed in a lot of the time.
Kind of sounds like a little bit like project management as well.
A little bit, yeah.
Which is quite a useful skill to gain actually on placement.
Yeah, it is.
Here's an interesting question then. So how did your sort of first month of doing the job, when you first started, you've got like 5 weeks left now, haven't you? So when you did that first month, how did that compare to, say, last month?
The first month was taken up kind of doing several things. So number one, learning how to use the CAD software that they use.
What do they use?
They use CATIA V5 and V6, mainly V6 now. Whereas nice. I was taught how to use Siemens NX at uni.
Yeah.
So they're made by two different companies, so they're quite different.
Yeah.
So I did lots of training, learning the basics. The training didn't really teach you, to be honest. Yeah, it's more you have to kind of use it yourself, and then you actually learn how to use it.
That's the best way, really.
So I did a fair bit of that, and then I did a lot of benchmarking. So the task I was given early on by like my managers and people in my team was benchmarking, where I essentially find information about competitor vehicles online that is related to issues or problems we're working on in studio engineering. So for example, I don't know, if we're trying to figure out where we can put a camera on the front of the car, then I would go away and look at the main competitor vehicles that my vehicle program is most similar to, and then compile like a PowerPoint full of images and data on what other cars have done, like what cameras they're using, how they've integrated them, where they are on the car. So I did a lot of that, which, it was good, especially as I didn't know much about cars at all.
Yeah.
Like I literally knew nothing, to be honest.
So was it quite a steep learning curve?
Yeah, very steep at first. It's still pretty steep now, to be honest. I wouldn't say it's really slowed down. I'm still learning a hell of a lot. The stuff I'm doing now is very different. So that's what I did in my first month. Whereas now I'm I'm semi-responsible for my own zone of the car. So the car's broken up into different zones. So you got like front end, rear end, canopy, below waist. So
Which
I
part?
work a lot. I work a lot on front end. So
Nice.
that's like bumpers, anything in the front end really. It's like the
Yeah.
grill.
Can
stuff
you
like that.
reveal which car it is that you're working on, or is that
No.
classified?
No, that's classified.
That's
Can't tell
classified.
you that.
Oh,
Sorry.
it's one of the Land Rovers or the Range Rovers. Can you even say that?
I think I can say it's one of the Range Rovers. Yeah.
So effectively from first month was a lot about learning the software and sort of getting your feet wet a little bit. Now you have a lot more ownership over your section of the car. Would you say that's sort of a summary of what you said?
Yeah. So essentially. So now I spend a lot of time talking to people, whereas in my first month I didn't really have to talk to many people because I was just finding information online and learning how to use CAD. Whereas now I'm in meetings all the time. I'm talking to the designers. I'm talking to other people in my team. A lot of it is people skills and kind of mediation and working through making compromises and kind of figuring out what next steps. A lot of it's quite tactical as well. It's a bit political at times.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
No,
You've got to kind of learn how to play the field in order to get kind of sometimes what you want in the long run.
That's quite interesting. So that sort of leads me to ask, like, so what does a typical like day look like for you? Like, take us through a typical day in, you know, your studio engineering role.
So I go into I go into the design studio every day. So I don't really work from home.
What time?
8. So I get in about 8. I normally have about half an hour before meetings start. So in that time, I'll kind of, I don't know, look at my calendar to see what meetings I've got on throughout the day. I've got like a notebook where I take notes in all the time and I write down all the things I have to do. So I'll have a look at that to remind myself what I'm meant to be doing. And normally about 8:39, we have a team startup every day. So that's essentially just a meeting which has like my manager and then a load of the other guys in my team in it, and we just kind of chat about what's going on, what everyone's doing, if anyone needs any help, if we need to pull people into meetings we got throughout the day. I'll normally probably on average have about 2 or 3 meetings in a day that I actually need to be in. I'll have lots on my calendar, but lots of them I don't really need to be in. So go to them. Each one is probably on average like an hour. A lot of them will be based around feasibility. Most of them are with the engineers. Yeah, I'll sit in them. In the time when I'm not in meetings, I'll either be doing CAD because we kind of have to, a lot of the takeaways we'll get from meetings is kind of studies into stuff. So looking at the data in CAD, playing around with it, building proposals. Surprisingly, we work quite a lot on PowerPoint because we have to present lots of stuff to the designers and we do that on PowerPoint. So I have like a massive PowerPoint called like my working evidence slides, which is like 150 slides long, where it's just like slides on different proposals and stuff like that. We're also responsible for managing, or kind of, we work a lot with the clay modelers. So we have
clay modelers.
Yeah. So in the studio we have life-size clay models of the cars that we're working on.
Wow.
So they kind of work it up whether, I think they start in sketches for an original concept of a car, and then I think it goes speed foams. This is probably completely wrong, but
just go for
speed foams where it's just like a block of foam that's about a third scale, so about that big.
Yeah.
And they'll model the car out of that, and then they'll move on to same size, so third scale, but clay. You've got clay modelers who are like ninjas with their hands. They have like a block of clay and they can sculpt it into a beautiful looking car with like curves and it looks realistic. And then we have life-size ones, which life-size, so they're pretty big. So we work quite a lot of them because we might give them data and then they'll mill it onto the clay using these massive like milling machines that are like 12 foot tall. And then they'll smooth it all out and they'll put in the details and stuff like that. And then I'll often have sessions with the designers around the clay where we'll get data in from engineering, we'll mill it on the clay. The designers will look at it and say, we like that, we don't like that, we want to change that.
But no, that's very, very helpful. So thank you for sharing that. I think it's always helpful to know what you do like day to day, because I feel like that's something that people kind of really want to know. Like people say the generic roles, but actually what is the day to day look like? So that's good. So do you get like a lunch break allocated, or do you have to like be responsible for taking that yourself, or how does that work?
Yeah, we have a half an hour lunch break. most people take it around 12:30. Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite flexible. Like, if you don't take your lunch break at the right time because you're just stuck in meetings or whatever, then I think it's okay realistically to take it a bit later on. But yeah, so some people eat at their desk. Usually the managers kind of eat at their desk, but lots of other people kind of just eat elsewhere in the studio. They've got kitchens and stuff where there are microwaves, so you can bring food in. They've got fridges as well.
What do
So
you
can go and
usually
eat
do?
somewhere else. I normally pre-make food and then heat it up in the microwave and eat it there, not at my desk most of the time.
Yeah, that's kind of what I do. Same. Any leftovers from the night before, slap it in the microwave.
No, I don't do that.
You don't
like
have
batch
leftovers. You
cook.
just
I eat that much. I don't have leftovers. I pre-make something at the start of the week. Like this week it was meatballs, so I just made like a massive
just
pot of
meatballs, nothing else.
Just meatballs, yeah. Just fry them, bit of salt and pepper, stick it in there. No sauce, nothing.
Nothing, just dry meatballs.
Don't mix it with pasta.
Excellent.
Yeah.
It helps the brain of the designer or the studio engineer.
Yeah, definitely.
What would you say that you most enjoy about your job?
I think it's the satisfaction when something either goes well, like a presentation, and everyone's kind of happy at the end, and you get told like you did a good job, or when you see progression in what you've been working on and it kind of makes it onto the car. Because I think, obviously, I don't know this yet, but in like however many years' time, when the car comes out and I see it on the road for the first time, I'll be able to point at it and say, oh yeah, I did that bit, that bit, that bit, and that bit.
Yeah, that's cool.
Realistically, I'm 22. I've only done a few years at uni, so I don't think many people kind of our age would be able to say that, particularly on such a cool product. Like I think
it's very unique.
Yeah, it's very unique, and I really like kind of what I do. I would say those moments though are kind of few and far in between.
Tell me about a time where you felt like quitting your job.
You can't quit though. Can we even do that?
Can we quit? Or maybe if I rephrase it, tell me about a time, like a specific story if you can, when you wanted to sort of give up and you were like, no, I've had enough, I don't want to do this anymore.
I think realistically, times when I've not had much on.
So like boredom.
Yeah, not so much boredom though. It's never been for long periods. Early on when I started, I needed quite a lot of supervision because I didn't have a clue what I was doing, particularly in CAD. Our team is quite small, so people are often loaded up with a lot of work. So it's not always possible to supervise someone 24/7, obviously. So there were times when I'd have to kind of just sit there for a while waiting for someone to give me help.
Yeah.
Whilst they were in important meetings that realistically they couldn't jump out of. Now I just kind of sit there feeling a bit stupid because it was probably something very easy that I just couldn't figure out. But because I don't have the experience or know-how, I couldn't do it. It just doesn't make you feel good. I imagine it also doesn't make the other person who wants to be helping you out but can't because they don't have enough time feel good either. So I found that quite frustrating at times, more just kind of getting frustrated at myself because the one thing I hate is not being able to do something. It really frustrates me. I don't know why. So
hence why you're applying to a summer placement straight after your full year placement before uni.
Yes, something like that.
Got to always be doing something, feeling useful. Would you say you feel valued as like a placement student, like they still use you to your best of your abilities?
Yes, definitely.
Good.
I do feel like a kind of key member of the team.
That's good.
I mean, it's nice being given responsibility, I think, when you can handle it. I think that there's a fine line though between given responsibility that you can handle and it makes you feel good when you follow through on tasks and actually succeed.
Yeah.
And then being given too much responsibility and you feel way out of your depth.
Yeah.
That kind of beats you down a little bit. I think it's hard for superiors sometimes to kind of figure out where that line is. But
I think it's fair to say that every single placement student at some point will be overloaded.
Yes, although I think it's always best to overload someone than to underload them.
If you find the line.
Them, that's the only way.
You're only going to find the line if you go over the line and then you dial it back in a little bit.
Yes.
Rather than constantly just being under the line and a bit underwhelmed.
Yeah. Otherwise, you'll spend all your time bored. Not bored, but you won't really see your potential and you won't grow as much as you could.
The way my manager puts it is, well, actually, I don't know if it's my manager or if it's a video I watch, but they talk about different levels of stress and some stress being good, which they would call re-stress. So re-stress is good stress that motivates you and pushes you forward to achieving your goal and working hard, and de-stress is bad stress that actually overloads you and makes you anxious and unable to perform. So
Right.
I think it's sort of finding a balance between that kind of those different stress levels, I'd say. Going into like the culture of JLR, how have you found the culture? What is it like working in a big company like that? What's the culture like?
Kind of hard to describe because I don't really know how it compares to other companies because I've only really been in this one.
Sure.
But I mean, within my department or within my team, I think there's a very nice culture where everyone's just very friendly, and there isn't such a kind of power division in that
Yeah.
your managers and senior managers kind of like respect you, they trust you, they talk to you. It's very nice in that sense. But in being quite a large company, I suppose it's quite segregated in that everyone's got their own little role. Like I think my role is very broad and probably about as broad as it gets.
Yeah.
Whereas I think in other parts of the company, you'll get people that work on very tiny parts of the car and don't really get to see much else. Like you'll have an engineer that specializes in like a particular flange or a steering wheel, and that's what they spend all their time focusing on. Which if that was me, I wouldn't enjoy that. My course at uni is very broad, which kind of fits my role.
That's good.
So I'm used to working on lots of different things kind of all at once and jumping between kind of different areas of the car, I suppose, which is nice. But I'd say there's a good culture. I don't think it's perfect,
No.
but I don't think many companies are, particularly big companies, to be honest. Particularly when you've got so many people working in a company.
Yeah.
You've then got like an infinite more ways for things to go wrong and for things to not be perfect, really.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think it's got a good culture overall.
No, it sounds like quite a good place and quite an interesting office as well.
Yes.
Particularly with these clay models of cars, I think that would be very interesting. What would you say is the best single experience you've had on that placement? I know one thing I've got in my mind that I know you've done. Like I think it was on the first day. What was that? Do you remember? What was it?
I mean, on the first day we got to drive lots of the different cars. So they had it was a driving experience day or something. So we got to drive the Range Rovers and Land Rovers, one of which across like an off-road course, which was pretty cool. And then we got to take it on a track. So they share a track with Aston Martin, and we got to drive, each of us. So we're going to do a Range Rover, we're going to do I-Pace, F-Pace, F-Type. I think that was it. You just sat in a car with a driving instructor, and they just kind of showed you how to rip it around the track, and you were obviously driving the whole time.
That's so
cool.
So it started up here and just downhill for the rest of the placement, was it? Hopefully not.
Something like that. No, it was really good. We got to hit pretty high speeds. I think we're going at 160 miles an hour or something at points. And you're going around
160.
160. I think that was what it was.
My goodness.
But you're going around a corner on a track, and the instructor's like, slow down. I didn't think I was going that fast, and turns out you're going around a corner at like 100 miles an hour, which you wouldn't normally do. That's not a good idea.
No, that's not a good idea. The question that clearly follows from that is, what skills or strength do you reckon you've most developed during this role? So other than driving ability?
I think it's probably two. I think one is probably people skills and communication. Because I mean, my people skills and communication have never been that great. I'm an introvert, so yeah. And this job role is kind of like what's it called? I want to say the Antichrist, but it's not the Antichrist. What's the thing that's like
opposite,
directly opposed to your ability?
I know
it exploits all your weaknesses.
Basically, diametrically opposed to what you are like. This role is, so it's pushed you out of your comfort zone a lot. Then
so I've grown a lot in that aspect, and then I think also intuition, like
and what do you mean by that?
Well, it's taught me a lot to kind of think for myself and make judgment calls myself, and kind of follow my gut. But like that will be within meetings, like knowing what to say, what not to say, how to react. That will also be kind of knowing which bits of work to prioritize. That will be knowing what to raise with like my manager and what not to raise. All sorts of things. Basically thinking for yourself and making your own decisions. I think particularly within a field that you're not too familiar with, like it's very different, I think, doing that at uni compared to doing it in the workplace, because I think number one, there are larger consequences in the workplace than at uni. I think at uni you're a little bit protected and there's only so far you can go wrong.
Yeah, and if you do make a mistake, yeah, like you said, doesn't have any implications really, does it?
Yeah, no, there aren't really any implications at uni, whereas at work there are implications not just on you but on other people that you work with.
Yeah, like cost, time,
yeah,
all that
cost,
kind of stuff.
time, how other people view you. I think largely the amount of trust that people have in you is determined by the decisions you make, which then determines your future career, really.
Profound. Good advice there. I like that. If you were to do a placement year again, would you do the same role or would you want to look somewhere else?
Oh no, I definitely do the same role.
Okay.
Can't really think of anything else I'd want to do instead. I mean, I think cars are kind of the ultimate product in that they're infinitely complex and they're really cool. And I don't think you really get that balance elsewhere.
Yeah.
Like you can go into like airplanes and stuff.
Yeah.
They're pretty complex. Yeah, aerospace. But you don't really get to sit in the design studio where you've got lots of them sitting around you, a lot of them unreleased. So you see cars that aren't in the public eye yet or won't be for the next however many years. So yeah, I think it's just really cool. I think also getting to have your own kind of impact on the car and theoretically being able to see that when it comes out eventually, particularly with such a low level of experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a very interesting. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. If you said at the start of the year that Matt would be doing something that completely was the opposite of being an introvert, I'd be like, gosh, that's going to be interesting to see how that goes. But that's great though. I'm glad you've I think that's a great skill. Probably it's quite hard for introverts to learn how to become people. That's the right word. Quite hard for introverts to learn people skills without kind of really being pushed out the comfort zone. It sounds like that's what this has done for you, which is great. Finally then, is there anything else that you think people should know about your job or about going on placement at all?
I think just go for it, really. I'd say that doing a placement I found it a lot more valuable than all my years at uni. I've learned much more on placement than I have in my 3 years at uni. And I think that what I've learned on placement is much more valuable also than what I've learned at uni. At uni, they just kind of teach you theoretical stuff, most of which you won't really use again. Whereas on placement, you learn how to actually do stuff that's applicable to the real world and stands a much greater chance of being used in your future.
I totally agree. Just quickly, what percentage of your degree do you reckon you actually use in your current role as a studio engineer?
5%. I literally use
CAD,
yeah, and it's not even the same CAD. I had to learn it all over again, essentially.
Yeah.
I use a little bit of material stuff, like knowing the name of some plastics.
Yeah.
And a tiny bit of maths, which is normally just like figuring out the size of rectangles.
Nice.
That's kind of about it.
Yeah, well, no, that's helpful. I think that's always something that people ask. I remember asking that question before I started, is how much will I actually use? And generally the answer is very little. It's probably because your uni degree kind of teaches you stuff that you don't actually realize that it's teaching you. But anyway, well, that is it. Thank you so much, Matt, for agreeing to talk about your job role. Who knows who's going to watch this? But no, I really appreciate you coming on and chatting about it. My screen's just changed color, hence why the lighting's gone off. Shows to me that we should stop here. So that was the interview with Matt. Thank you so much to Matt for agreeing to talk about his role. I really hope you found it helpful. If you did find this helpful, then next week I will be interviewing a systems engineer who worked on naval ships on his placement. So stick around and subscribe just so that you don't miss that video when it comes out. So thank you so much for watching if you have made it this far. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.